Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. It's a great pleasure to be once again joined by the founder and chairman of IDSF, Brigadier General Amir Avivi. General, thank you so much for joining today.
My pleasure.
General, as always, there's a lot to discuss. You're en route. Hopefully we'll have good Wi-Fi signal for this briefing. What can you share with us?
So, look, a lot's going on in Israel, and not necessarily all in the battlefield. In Israel now, the big news is about the, chief advocate of the army. At the beginning of the war, we were arresting this terrible Nukhba terrorist. We brought a special unit to guard them. And these guys are beasts. They're really the most terrible there is. These terrorists, and they were guarding them, checking them, and so on. And one of them got out of control. They tried to get hold of him. Eventually, there was a suspicion that maybe they used more force than needed. And they opened the investigation. But what happened then is that suddenly you saw two things. One is a video that was published in Channel 12, major network, with the claim that our soldiers, our brave soldiers, were accused of raping this terrorist, which is a terrible accuse. Now, the video was based on the cameras of the base itself. This is military, stuff, and somebody leaked it. Now, of course, this went out throughout the world. 100 million people watched it. Our soldiers were accused of raping, Gazans and so on. Terrible accusation. And then very fast, it turned out that this video was completely cooked. It was a combination of different dates, and you don't see anything on the video. You don't see them doing anything like that. By the way, this accusation later on was canceled. So they published, somebody leaked from the army that they raped this guy, and then it turned out it's completely not true. And it was really devastating. And obviously, when you have a leak like that, that really hurt dramatically our national security and also our soldiers that were arrested and so on. And these are warriors. And there should have been a very fast investigation. And I can say from my experience, when I was aide-de-camp of the Chief of General Staff, one day I visited with the Chief of Staff, the Gaza Division, and the Chief of Staff gave instructions that the division didn't like. And from there, we went to Jerusalem to a cabinet meeting. And as we were approaching Jerusalem, suddenly we hear on radio, TV, an attack on the Chief of Staff, things he said in the Gaza Division. So it was obvious that somebody spoke with a reporter, and tried to attack the policy of the Chief of Staff. So there was a leak. Following that, immediately, the Chief of Staff instructed the military police to start an investigation, to do a check on the phones of all the officers in the Gaza Division, and also send them to a polygraph. It took 3 days. It turned out that the Gaza Division commander is the one that leaked it. And that's it. The guy put a note. He said he's leaving the army. He wrote a letter that he's leaving the army, and that's it. It took 3 days. It was game over. Now here, a much more terrible event on a global level, and you want to know who did it, and there is no investigation. And finally, after a long time, they say the deputy of this prosecutor will investigate. They don't do the things they need to do. And we're ongoing like this a year and a half from the event, already a different chief of staff. And also the prosecutor, they say to the judges in the Supreme Court, we cannot find, there is no way to find, it's impossible, we'll never know, we should leave this, this is what it is, and so on. And then what happened this week, by chance, there is a process in the army that when an officer is getting a specific position, as a routine, they need to do a polygraph check. Either it's because the specific rank or it's because of a specific job. So you have an officer in this office of the prosecutor, and she was sent to a polygraph and she failed. And then she said, we leaked this. My general, Ifat Tomer, she was leading this. She knows that. She managed all of this. It was done in coordination with maybe 7, 8 more officers. The whole thing was leaked by chance because she was sent to a routine check. And then the whole thing exploded. Now the whole thing exploded. And yesterday there was a really bizarre event after this exploded and they stopped her. This general was sent to vacation and going to be investigated. Suddenly she disappeared in the beach in Tel Aviv. Everybody thought she committed suicide because of what happened, but it turned out she went into the sea and threw her phone in the sea and then called her husband. So she got rid of critical evidence. And I think that this is the beginning of a whole process of people really telling what is really going on within all these judicial, groups, whether it's in the army and not in the army. It's obvious that we're facing here something very dramatic. In Israel, people have been saying for years that there is something really rotten, in our judicial system. Because all systems, it doesn't matter if it's the government, the Knesset, bureaucracy, it's people. And if you have a certain area where there is no accountability and there is excessive force, then you find yourself in a situation where people do things they're not supposed to do. And this is what happened here. It's a big, big drama in the army. It's going to have big consequences not only in the army. And by the way, the crazy thing about this today, the publication, was that this terrorist that was supposedly abused, they released him to Gaza. So the only real witness that was supposed to be in the process, they send him back to Gaza, and that's it. There is no process. They will have to close all these accusations. And this is after really devastating results, talking about Israel's positioning in the world and our army and the accusations and all of that. So this drama is unfolding, just beginning. It's the first time, I think, in the history of Israel that we have a major general that has been locked up by the police and is investigated. Really shocking, but also not shocking. We understood that there's something really wrong, with these people. And the devastating thing is that these units are supposed to defend the soldiers. They're supposed to take care of them, and not undermine them and not do false accusations and not really undermine the state of Israel globally. Of course, if a soldier does something that is not according to the law, obviously, You need to investigate, you need to prosecute him. It's fine. But you don't do false accusations. You don't create false videos. You don't deal with this internationally. You do what you need to do. Do an investigation, check the facts, act according to the facts. We definitely want to be an army that can check itself, and soldiers are not saints. They sometimes do stupid things. But what happened here was really, really terrible, and at the beginning of a really, really big story that is being unfolded now.
General, I'm curious if you can share with us the motivation that this General Yifat had to really undermine the IDF, to make IDF soldiers look very bad. Maybe it was a way of pushing back against what Israel's doing in Gaza. How pervasive is that mindset, would you say, amongst the upper echelon of generals in the army right now? I mean, I'm not suggesting they're all going to commit crimes, but just the motivation to push back, to criticize on such a degree. Would you say there are many others like her in those upper roles?
So I think that in certain areas in the army, there is kind of mindset, a kind of culture that is composed of different issues. It's very complicated. It's not one thing, but one way they're looking at it, they're saying, we have to make sure that we defend Israel in Hague, and that they have to know that there is something wrong. We're doing really serious job and making sure that we deal with things. But what they did is the opposite. They created the accusations, and they were false. They created Hague. They undermined Israel. Another way of looking at it is, I think there are certain kind of people and officers who look at these soldiers, and I'm sorry, I'm going to say something terrible. They don't like them. They don't like them because these warriors, they're Zionist religious, they're from the periphery, they're not their kind of people, Maybe these are the kind of soldiers that maybe, I don't know, vote for Ben Gvir. And I don't think they love the soldiers. It's terrible to say, but some of them are under this kind of mindset. Instead of defending the soldiers, they undermine them. And they say we have to uphold law, but they act against the law. They do terrible things, leaking false documents, lying to the Supreme Court, lying to the general public, lying to the chief of staff and the minister, or two chief of staff, two ministers, doing a plot, not one person, 8, 9 officers doing it together. I think, I spoke with the chief of staff on Friday. And yes, once he got the information, he did what he needed to do. But I think the army really needs to go in depth when it comes to the culture. Really, they need to dismantle this unit and build it again. Completely change the leadership there. Something very, very big. And another thing that concerns me, I can say that in my service, because I was aide de camp and I was really exposed to the deepest and biggest secrets of Israel, I had to do, every 5 years, I had to do a polygraph. I did it 3 times. I remember the last time I did it, when I was commander of the School of Combat Engineers. I did a polygraph, finished it, I left the building, I was walking to my car. I didn't even manage to reach the car. I get a phone call from the ground forces. They call me and say, Amir, well done, you passed the exam very well. So it means like a minute after I finished, I already knew the result, okay? Now, she was checked in Sukkot 3 weeks ago. If the results were so devastating and dramatic, it's obvious that the relevant officer got the data immediately. Why did they wait 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks to talk to the chief of staff? And what did they do in these 2 weeks? So there's something really, really problematic here. And I think we're just in the beginning of something that is going to be a landslide. It's going to be something dramatic that will be, in a way, a judicial reform, but in a different way. Because everything that has been said, that these entities need to be checked and the balances are not right and so on, now it's being exposed.
In IDSF, we spend a lot of energy and resources educating, inspiring the next generation, the 20-year-olds fighting in Gaza, the young generation of Israel, to make sure they grow up to be fantastic leaders in the military and beyond. But I'm wondering, to speed up that process a little bit, what is the mechanism? What can be done to really clear out the rotten apples, so to speak, in these upper leadership positions? Is there like a mechanism in the army where you can just give early retirement to handfuls of people who are not accused of crimes, but just ideologically are not performing the way they should? Can that happen?
Yeah, of course. Look, it's all amount of leadership. It's about leadership. The chief of staff understands that a part of fighting the war and Hamas and so on, he needs to change the culture. He needs to really deal with this. One of the things I loved about serving in the army is that when you're given command of a unit, you are able to change things end to end. You are able to change the whole culture. And the chief of staff can do it on the army's level. He can really, really change everything. But he needs to set the standards, the values, and uphold them. And if an officer doesn't, act upon according to these values, could be discharged and retired. We need the people of Israel to trust the army, the leadership of the army. The people of Israel trust, our soldiers and commanders on the field. But everybody needs to trust also the top leadership. And they have to uphold the highest standards. People take it for granted. Okay, so she leaked something, I don't know. I served 30 years in the army. Being in the office of the chief of staff or being chief auditor, places where you see many reporters. Never, ever in my life leaked anything. It's not normal for somebody on uniform to leak to the press. It's not supposed to happen. And also then to hide it and lie about it and so on. This is not the kind of values we were educated upon. And the chief of staff needs to set clear red lines and make sure that he takes the army back to where it's supposed to be.
So we, the Jewish people, are sometimes our greatest enemy. However, there are other enemies out there, and I think there are some developments in Lebanon. Maybe you can share with us.
Yeah, so in the last week, U.S. envoy arrived to Lebanon. There was a meeting in Nakura, and the message the U.S. conveyed to the Lebanese government: you have until the 31st of December to dismantle Hezbollah. So the U.S. is pressuring Lebanon to move faster with the process of dismantling Hezbollah, but obviously they cannot really do it, and it's not really happening. At the same time, Israel is looking at what's going on. Yes, we're attacking on a daily basis, degrading them all the time, but they are building themselves again. And therefore, there is an understanding, both Israeli and American, that Israel needs to enhance the attacks on Hezbollah to degrade them much more. This, of course, will help defend Israel, but this will also help create the terms for the Lebanese army to maybe be able to dismantle Hezbollah. So the coming 2 months in Lebanon are going to be interesting, and we'll see much more operations of the IDF. The IDF is also taking the reality that we're in Gaza, we're in a kind of ceasefire at the moment, so we can shift our energies and center of gravity back to Lebanon, and this is what the army is doing. We're enhancing the attacks in Lebanon as we speak.
There was a report that Hezbollah still has 40,000 soldiers and 20,000 rockets. Can you say if that's accurate and if any of that really poses a threat to the home front in Israel that we'll see rockets in the north?
I'm not sure what is the exact number, but yes, they are trying to rebuild themselves. Hezbollah is much, much, much more weaker than what it was before. It's not the same Hezbollah at all, but we're not going to let them rebuild, that's for sure. We're going to continue degrading them until we reach the point where this organization can really be dismantled. And it's a process that we need to continue in pushing forward.
Thank you, General, for sharing all of this. Thank you, of course, to all of our viewers, all of our supporters who watch these briefings, fight for Israel in the world, advocate for Israel, and of course, send in your questions. General, people are asking about the Houthis, right? Since this deal in Gaza, the Houthis stopped their missiles on Israel, but is the Houthi threat been completely neutralized, or they're just still sitting out there waiting for the next opportunity to strike Israel?
No, it has not been neutralized at all. Yes, we hit them, pretty bad, but they have capabilities. They are not shooting because there is a ceasefire. And Israel is really, really concentrating on building the capabilities and intelligence needed to deal with them. We understand that they're a serious threat. We have to take them very seriously. I don't think it's over with them. I think that we're going to go back and attack because they are going at a certain point to renew the attacks. Why? Because we are going to renew the attack in Gaza. There is no way to dismantle Hamas without the IDF doing that. And we'll wait, we'll give the administration time to try to do it diplomatically, but realistically speaking, it's not really going to happen. So when we renew the offensive in Gaza, then we'll see also the Houthi shooting, and we need to be ready and we need to be proactive and attack and make sure that we can really, really degrade them dramatically.
And another question that came in is Iraq, that there are Iranian-backed militias in Iraq, and do those pose an imminent threat right now on Israel?
So there are militias in Iraq, but we saw them already half a year ago deterred. They don't want to be involved. They are afraid that Israel will destroy them. So they decided to get out of the game and not attack Israel anymore. They have a lot of internal challenges. Iraq is broken to pieces, and there is all the time an ongoing civil war inside Iraq between the different elements, the Sunnis, the Shias, the Kurds. So they have enough problems of their own at present. We have to be alert, we have to be ready and see what's going on. They also saw what Israel was able to do in Iran itself. Iranians were monitoring very closely what they're doing. Israel is preparing plans also for Iran, and it's very clear if Iranians will try to rebuild again nuclear capabilities or renew the production of ballistic missiles, Israel is going to attack and attack fiercely. And I'm not sure they're going to survive the next time that we are going to attack. They know that, they're very careful, but we are really monitoring this.
And it seems that Iran has made it clear that they have no interest in talking with the US or modifying their program. So in terms of renewed attacks on Iran, is there like an infrastructure or technical capability that they'd have to achieve before Israel strikes them again? Is there a clear metric of how Israel determines that?
So Israel has really clear red lines about any attempts to renew production of ballistic missiles or enrich uranium again or try to rebuild their sites. It's monitored by Israel and the US. And they were also monitoring attempts to rebuild the air defense and the Air Force capabilities. And Israel needs to decide when is the right moment, and if indeed they're building a capability we won't agree to they have, then we'll see Israel proactive. And as we speak, in Gaza, as you know, Israel is controlling 53% of the Gaza Strip. We had in this 53%, we had some areas where we had pockets of resistance of terrorists, which we surrounded and were now destroying. Unfortunately, while we're waiting for the US to really do something about, dismantling Hamas and bringing the rest of the hostages, there are still 8 bodies in Gaza. Yesterday, we got 3 bodies. One of them, by the way, is the colonel, is the commander of the Southern Brigade of Gaza. Out of the 8 bodies, 6 are Israeli and 2 are foreign. So Israel has like 6 bodies still in Gaza. It's obvious that Hamas is renewing its capabilities, it's rebuilding. Israel cannot wait too long. The message to the president needs to be, okay, we're giving this a chance. You're able to dismantle Hamas diplomatically, amazing. But realistically speaking, I wouldn't give it even 1% of chance. It's not going to happen. So the IDF is saying, okay, we have this few weeks or whatever the time will be. At the moment, we're focusing on Lebanon. We're preparing for the Houthis. We have plans with Iran, but we're also working on the equipment, on the tanks, on the APCs. We have a lot of work. And this is what the IDF is doing as they're asserting their control over the areas that we are controlling. But it's imminent. At one point, the IDF will go in and destroy Hamas. What will be the exact date? We'll see.
Brigadier General Amir Avivi, thank you so much for sharing all of that. Thank you, of course, for all of your leadership throughout this war. Thank you to all of our viewers, all of our supporters for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.